people who have experienced trauma can help heal their trauma by reading about it from other people, reading about it in a book like this or this, and I'll get to those in a little bit. Reading these kinds of books can actually help the brain to process the trauma. So let me explain it. When a person experiences something that is too difficult for the brain to process, what the brain's going to do is keep it safe. It's going to say, you know what, you don't need to remember this. I'm just going to hang on to it for you in the limbic system. This is a really cool chart. I won't go into super detail, but basically take a look at this and screenshot and pause to read if you'd like. And this chart is showing that when something feels calm, then you have access to your whole cortex. When it feels alert, you have access to your cortex, but it's mostly hanging out in the limbic system. And then alarm, fear, terror is moving to different areas of the brainstem. So there are things that could happen to people that stay in the brainstem and stay in the limbic system to where your cortex might never really know what happened. So when a memory comes up, that kind of pushes against maybe that memory that's floating in the hippocampus and the limbic system that hasn't been processed. It feels like a trigger. It feels like an activating sensation. It's the same thing as a PTSD flashback. The brain and the body experience it as though it's happening in real time, because it's not something that you have experienced in your cortex where you can actually like make sense of everything that has happened. So when you see a memory or you see something that reminds you of something and you actually take some time to look at it and process it in your frontal cortex, like in therapy, for example, or journaling, when you do that, you're going to move the memory from the brainstem and the limbic system up into the cortex, and you can actually look at it and pull it apart and say, this is what this is. And so then the next time that something reminds you of that, it doesn't hit quite as hard because you can identify this is where that came from. So this is why I recommend reading books like Dumb Girl by Heidi Yewman. This is for someone who has experienced writing essays in childhood, or has experienced some trauma from a pew-pew. This is her story about how she connected her memories from writing essays to her experience being an advocate for pew-pew. When you read these kinds of books, it's really difficult, but it will help you bring those memories up to the surface so you can process them. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention my book, Rose-Colored Glasses. This will help you do the same for intimate partner toxic relationships. Being careful on the word choice I use in this video for the algorithm. But this is my story about going through a toxic relationship, and reading about it will help you to understand, to remember your own memories. But then after every chapter, I also explain psychologically what's happening. And so it'll also help you to understand the power and control mechanisms of why you got in it and why you stayed and why it was so hard to leave. Anyhow, yeah, reading about trauma in these books where you can remember your own stories is going to help you to process your own memories. And this book, What Happened to You by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry, will help you to understand the mechanisms of why that is. If you learned something, please like, follow, subscribe, and pass it along. And happy healing.